Hello, friends. Welcome to this week's American Mussar Community Gathering. This is going to be our second week exploring the soul trait of silence. Last week, we were really talking about speech, when to speak, not to speak. Today is going to be more focused on kind of inner silence and the quiet that can come from meditation and a couple of interesting takes on that. But first, we will begin, as we always do, with a short meditation. So I invite you to close your eyes and take in a deep breath through the nose and hold, and exhale through the mouth and hold. And again, inhale through the nose and hold, and exhale through the mouth and hold.
0 key to navigate.
And
Unmute.
as you go
City.
at your own pace
Base.
of
Go.
inhaling through the nose and holding, and exhaling through the mouth and holding. If thoughts should come into your head, just observe them and let them pass, like watching a car pass by on the road. And on your next inhale, say to yourself, Shema. And on the exhale, listen. In Shema, we are listening deeply, without judgment, without offering advice. In Shema, we are listening with an open heart. Shema, listen. And when you are ready, you may open your eyes. How did you experience the extra pauses that I included this week? Anybody, did it get loud for anybody in their head? It sometimes happens. We'll get started. I'm curious how silence showed up for you in the last week. For those who were here last time, you talked about doing a silence practice in our partner study. Not everyone was here, but silence, of course, governs when we talk, when we don't talk, as well as this inner silence. So, who would like to share first? Beth and then Wendy.
I use a meditation app, and
Voice
it
one.
has
Going to meeting.
a little saying each day, and I came across one I really liked. It said, "In order to hear the infinite, you must be very, very quiet."
Hmm, love that. Thank you, Beth. Wendy.
How do you how do you how do
Well, when I left our Mussar group last week, I forgot all about it. I forgot about silence, everything. Doesn't happen a lot for me, but it did. But I was studying this book. I read it 3 times. We were meeting to talk it over, and I had all kinds of notes, 4 or 5 pages of notes, so much to say.
Hmm.
That was yesterday. And there was no way that I was saying anything. It didn't happen.
Mm.
So today I went to the same kind of thing with a book, and I just was completely relaxed and just
Mm.
didn't plan on anything.
Mm.
Did get to talk, and I realized that really my heart does not want to say anything unless it's going to be uplifting for the other people who are listening. One,
Mm.
two, that's how the divine can use me.
Mm.
But if I'm talking, that's not going to happen. I've got to listen and then know when it's right to say something. And I thought that's pretty cool because I was kind of upset because I did all that work and didn't get to say anything. But then today it was just lovely. And I'll
Mm.
take this day every time over the other.
Mm. Thank you, Wendy. That reminds me of a story which I haven't shared in a couple of years. So I'll share it again. But when I was getting ready to write The Spiritual Practice of Good Actions, I was part of like a big writing coaching group, and I was at a conference, and they had book agents there. And so you could wait in line and give your pitch to the agent. And so I was waiting in line to give the pitch for what became the book that many of you have read. And I was chatting with somebody in front of me, and I said to her, "Oh, you're up next. Do you want just a couple minutes to compose yourself and think about what you're going to say?" She's like, "A lot of Christian people at this conference." And she said, "No, I'm just going to roll with the Holy Spirit." I was like, "Oh," it's like, "Wow." And I decided to do the same thing, except for me, it was now I call it rolling with the bitachon, rolling with the trust in God. And I went up, I gave my pitch, and the guy's like, "Yeah, I would be really interested in that. I once represented this book called When Bad Things Happen to Good People."
Mm.
And he represented the book. I wrote the book proposal. 2 weeks later, he found the publisher, and that was it. But I was so used to like rehearsing things in my head and getting it all. So I really can resonate with what Wendy's talking about, where sometimes it's better to just go in and be yourself and not trying to have everything perfectly aligned.
Mm.
Other people have a practice you tried this week or some way that silence showed up in your life. Liam.
Um, so I love to talk, and my job involves a lot of communication. It's a very integral part of what I do. So it's like a almost nonstop banter while I'm working. So for the past week, I was trying to think of how can I incorporate both what I'm learning, but also still maintain what I'm supposed to be doing at my job, but I wanted to see if I could find those moments where I could bring it in. So I started asking, I work with kids, and so I started asking the kids very open-ended questions just to give them the space to be the ones talking
Mm.
instead of me doing my banter that I normally would do. And I don't know, I found it really interesting because, I mean, first of all, I mean, kids famously say the darndest things. There's
Mm.
been multiple TV shows about it. And giving them the space to do that, I found a whole different direction to take what I'm doing.
Mm.
So I found it really very useful to have a talkative job and still find those moments of silence and just giving the kids the space to be kids.
Mm. Love that, Liam. And let's remember that when if we get to one of the Rav Kook readings later. Nico.
Hi, everyone. So the practice I tried was not speaking more or less, but trying to be more precise and respectful of my words and choosing them better.
Mm.
I don't know if I succeeded or failed, but it's, yeah, something I tried.
Hmm, great. Thank you, Nico. Anyone else? Okay, well, let's take this a little bit deeper. Hmm. This is it. Okay, so we talked about the spectrum of speech. I want to warm up a lot, have a quote warm up question. Um, it's talking about Lashon Hara, which is translates as evil tongue or evil speech. Uh, Bonnie last week actually brought this up. It kills three people when we gossip or speak ill of someone: the one who speaks, the one who listens, and the one who is being slandered. Okay, so Rabbi David Jaffe, whoops, sorry about that. Um, he wrote this second bullet. So could someone please, kind of in conversation with or commenting on this teaching from the Talmud, could someone please unmute and read this bullet?
When we harm others through speech, we dull ourselves to spiritual experience, while mocking speech makes others wary and destroys trust. We literally make it difficult to dwell together as neighbors when we speak Lashon Hara.
Thank you, Pete. Okay, so what is Rabbi Jaffe teaching us here? What is he saying?
I think as far as gossip or Lashon Hara, I think if people do it with us, they'll do it to us.
Hmm,
So if they talk about others with us, they probably talk about us with others. And that makes me be careful who I share some things with.
hmm. Yeah, so you're speaking to this where he's saying it destroys trust
Mhm.
because it's like,
Yep.
yeah, love that. Thank you.
I'm not sure I know what mocking speech is.
Um, the full sentence was, well, mocking speech sometimes brings us together, like when we're young. So it's like, think about the teenagers kind of making fun of the classmate
Mm-hmm.
or by the
Boys are
face
great at that.
behind their back.
Boys do that so well, and they're still best friends.
Yeah, sometimes it's like a thing.
Uh-huh.
Wendy.
It looks like if we do harm through our speech to others, we're cutting off communication with the divine.
Hmm.
That doesn't sound good to me. I don't want to do that.
Yeah, so how do you say more? How do you, I don't disagree at all, but I'd like you to elaborate kind of on what you're seeing and what's leading you down that path.
Well, first of all, with what happened to me the last 2 days, I realized that if I'm talking, I can't hear. I can't be hearing and talking at the same time. Maybe other people can, but that's one of my, I can only do one of those things. And so if I'm talking, and especially if I'm doing harm to somebody who the divine has created, then I'm not going to be able to hear what wonderful things the divine might have for me and for me to do, and just cuts off communication.
Hmm. Yeah.
Even with the other person, they might have something to offer
Mhm.
to me, but if I'm speaking some kind of harmful things to them, then they're not going to be able to speak that to me, and they're probably not going to be able to give that to me. It's kind of like getting a bunch of gifts and throwing them out the window.
Love that metaphor about throwing the gifts out the window. And if we remember that everyone has a divine spark, they're not, there's the divine out there and there's the divine in here, and that there's the divine in you. And so, yeah, we can, if we start sort of thinking about this in spiritual terms, suddenly we can go to a very different place, maybe, than just the intellectualizing of, oh, well, it kills three people, and yeah, it's destroys trust. So there's a kind of a deeper level here. Yes, Aileen.
I just say, I mean, this isn't anything new, but to me, it just sounds like um, when we harm others through speech, we're really taking a wrecking ball to relationships.
Mhm.
It's kind of like maybe in bowling, you're bowling and you all of a sudden you knock down all the pins. You're not just getting one, you're knocking
Mhm.
them all down because they're reverberations.
Yeah.
And yeah,
So I can't see all of you, so you'll need to use your electric hand raising, um, or just unmute and speak. Wendy.
Just to add to that, I was thinking kind of myself when I said that, I wasn't going to be able to receive, but I'm thinking now it also affects the whole entire community when we do that because the other, like the three people that are, that it, well, kills, but affects, they're not going to be able to receive the spiritual uh, experience either. And then that affects the entire community. And I guess that's why we did we don't dwell together as neighbors. We don't live our lives to show others how great it is to be Jewish, and it's
Yeah.
just like cuts everything off.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so now that we've kind of warmed up our spiritual muscles, our spiritual awareness muscles, let's start to look at Rav Kook. And I'm probably going to leave the text up, which I don't usually do, just because I find it a little bit harder to understand. You might as well. Please ask questions like Pete did earlier. Like, I don't know what mocking speech is, and it's a little more poetic. It's translated from Hebrew. So let's see where it leaves us. So this was from an essay. This was from, I think I got these from the Hadar website, and they call this one Prepare Yourself for Silence. So I don't have individual bullets, but someone want to unmute and start to read?
I'll read. Prepare yourself for silence. The entire realm of consciousness, with everything that comes from it, down to the very lowest levels, in other words, the entirety of existence, shifts between times of silence and times of speech.
Okay, let me pause you there. Okay, so quite a beginning. Okay, so I'm just talking about the entirety of existence now. Okay, yeah, and so that shifts between times of silence and speech. Okay, please continue, Aileen.
When the universe prepares itself to receive God's supernal outpouring, everything is still and silent. Then, when those forces that have received God's outpouring sent onward to those below them, speech begins.
Okay, let's pause there and let's talk about this. So, not everyone is sure about the divinity. So, you might think about this as still, are there ideas that come to us in times of meditation, in times of stillness, times of silence? You can, I think many people, even if they're not sure about God, still experience this when allowing the mind to clear, going out into nature, letting things get quiet, um, that they get inspiration or they get ideas. So what is this sort of talking about? What's the argument that he's making? Or what's the teaching that he's doing? Yes, Susan.
I'm finding this a little bit confusing, I admit, because I think I'm on board that God creates with speech and that our silence makes us more receptive to what's going to come to us from God.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't understand the line then when those forces that have received God's outpouring sent onward to those below them. I didn't yet understand that.
I have to say that is a little bit, I honestly don't completely understand what it means either. It seems kind of poetic
Yeah.
but Liam, what do you think?
The first thing that came to my mind when reading that was the tree of life from the Kabbalah and how energy is flowing through the different areas of the tree of life
Mm-hmm.
from the divine and then ultimately manifesting in the physical realm.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if that's what the author meant, but that's what came to my mind.
Yeah, he's a mystic. And
Hmm.
so we need to kind of put on our mystic hats that, like, what he believes is there's these pourings of energy that come through, and then at some point that gets converted to speech. So, like, I've gotten inspiration, and now it turns into speech or it turns into action in some way. Nico.
Makes me think of two things. One, sorry, I don't remember who said that, but someone said, when I speak, I don't listen. So it's kind of a poetic way of saying you have to be still and be open to what can come so that it can come.
Yeah.
It reminds me of like Zen philosophy of, if you want something to happen in your life, you have to give it space for it to happen, because if there's no room for it to come, it won't come at all.
Mm-hmm.
And on the other side of it, it makes me think of like quantum physics when we talk about the energy of emptiness, the energy of the void. Like
Mm-hmm.
even in complete void, there will be, if there is actual complete void, then there will be particles that will spontaneously erupt and then disappear again. But that only happens in
Hmm.
complete void, not in something where or not in the space where there is something.
Yeah, and of course, the Kabbalists' name for God is Ein Sof, nothingness. It's
Mm.
complete void.
Wow.
So, as my father used to like to say, science and philosophy at the highest levels converge, right?
Mm.
I mean,
I agree. That's why I was offering this example.
yeah, no, I love it. Yeah, Pete.
Yeah, maybe it means that in order to learn, you have to be silent first.
Mm, yeah. Yeah, Pete, you want to read this last couple sentences?
Prepare yourself for the measure of silence. Take heed of the voice from above that brings blessing and goodwill and spontaneously gives these to you. God's word will come to you. Day to day expresses speech. Okay.
Yeah. That last sort of sentence, day to day expresses speech. I was trying to find the Hebrew. I couldn't find the original Hebrew, but I think it's probably poetic, and mysticism is about uncovering the mystery. And sometimes these concepts can't be expressed in a logical language. Like there's something there that I'm maybe catching a glimpse of, but it's also a little bit behind the veil. Michael.
I'm struck by the word prepare and and the phrase and the phrases above it. The universe prepares itself. Prepare yourself. It feels like is what he trying to say that silence happens whether we want it to or not, and all we have to do is be open to it?
Hmm.
This feels like it's an because I approach silence of inner thought as a for me personally as a real struggle. It's something I have to work to try to do, but this is seems to be saying something very different. Like the silence will come
Hmm.
when it comes because God will make, or the universe, however you conceptualize that, will make that happen. And I'm just one small human, so it's going to happen either way. Is that what he's saying here?
I don't know. What do people think? Is that what Rav Kook is saying? Wendy, if you could remember to unmute, please.
Sorry, I thought yes, I was going to say just kind of on that in that vein, prepare yourself for the measure of silence with the parentheses through meditation or by meditating. And that's you're getting ready. And then take heed of the voice from above. In other words, those thoughts keep coming into your mind that you have to work so hard, like you're saying, Michael. That is how you prepare, is to not though that's not what you're supposed to be hearing from the divine at that minute. Your silence is going to make it so that you can hear that voice. And so I was just thinking it's meditation that means that's how you prepare.
Yeah, a meditation, I would say, is one tool for silence. Um, Susan, what did you want to say? If you could remember to unmute as well.
Sorry. I don't know if Michael, if you were the one who was drawing the parallel between the universe prepares and we're supposed to be preparing. But I thought in this case, measure is referring to God's outpouring, that we have to prepare ourselves for the measure, for the part that's going to come to us in silence. The voice from above that brings us blessing and good. And I have been finding this silence practice really interesting. And so I've read your chapter, Rabbi Greg, and then also the book that you recommended, the Teleshkin book. And then I went back to Alan Marinis and read his chapter. And he talks a lot about silence in his chapter and also relates it to Hit Bodhidut, that, either the inward silent reflection or the conversation with God. And I'm seeing some of that in here, that we begin with our inward silence and a quieting of the mind and, expansion of the soul. And then we can begin to be in more communion with God or to receive what we're supposed to receive.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great connection with Heat Dude. Thank you. Beth.
This phrase day to day expresses speech reminds me of Psalm 19, and I had to look up, it's verse 2, that says, day to day pours out speech, and night to night reveals knowledge. And I think it's silent speech, if there can be such a thing, from Hashem. And he's revealing his glory, not as a one time thing, but an ongoing thing, day by day, night by night. And that's all for now. I'll come back when I remember the rest.
Yeah. Thank you, Beth. Pete.
Yeah. I think it's been said that if you remain silent long enough, you can hear the angels whispering.
Love that.
Yeah.
I had a Mussar coaching client, and for her, the way to achieve silence internally was to get in the pool and swim a bunch of laps. So, kind of getting back to what Wendy said, it could be meditation, but I'm very sympathetic to what Michael said. It's sometimes my brain just is not quiet. And meditation is a skill that you can learn, but if the brain is actively very loud, that becomes harder. Yeah, Peter.
The inner voice comes from, in most people, the left side of the brain. So if you can quiet the left side of the brain and get in touch with the right side of the brain, then you can achieve silence. You can do that through meditation. Sometimes it's difficult to meditate, but playing a musical instrument, for instance, will achieve the same thing. And uh, painting or doing an art project also does the same thing, gets you in touch with the right half of your brain and quiets the left side.
Hmm. Yeah, thank you, Pete. So meditation is kind of the most famous one that we think about, but there's lots of ways that we could do this. And it's really an opportunity to decide what does it mean to me to prepare myself for a measure of silence. What might that be? Wendy.
Can I ask a question? Um, what visualization, um, like meditation and visualization, like if you are meditating on something, is that meditation too, or does it quiet you
It's
or
definitely
focus you?
it's definitely meditation, and I love I love guided meditations, and those are easier for me. It does sort of, I think, quiet things and having a visualization involved, but I think it's an individual experience. And um, shall we go on to the next Rav Kook reading? We seem to be pretty well engaged here. Okay, so may I have someone unmute and begin to read?
I will. The special quality of silence. This is a special type of silence that is accompanied by a spirit of holiness. That silence emerges from something within you bursting forth. Something bursts forth from the midst of the wellspring of your soul. Your soul bursts forth because it is searching for a great arena where it can spread out and stretch itself without any constriction.
Okay, let's pause there and try to digest these first three. So the first sentence, he's kind of laying out, I'm going to tell you about a special type of silence that comes with a spirit of holiness. So he's not talking about turning off the radio. He's talking about something spiritual, something mystical, something holy. And so where does this silence come from, according to Rav Kook? That's what
From
he's,
the wellspring of your soul.
Mhm.
yeah. Or in other words, yeah, from within us. I see
Yeah.
going like this. Yeah. Okay. And then what do you think of this image of pieces bursting forth twice? What does that mean? What is that? What image does that bring to mind? Yeah, Liam.
To me, I personally I sort of like it. It to me implies that silence, much like the divine, is a verb,
Mm,
and that there is an energy of silence within itself.
mm.
I'm sorry.
I was just like making a thoughtful.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought somebody had said something and that I had talked over them inadvertently. Never mind.
Yeah, so you were saying that silence is kind of something, it's like a verb, it's a thing. It's not. It's not nothing, it's a thing in and of itself. Yeah, Wendy.
Well, I think of bursting
Let's
forth
go to Carolyn first. I saw Carolyn's
as
hand.
joy. I
We haven't
just
heard from
that's all I
Carolyn.
wanted to say. Just I think of bursting forth as joy.
Thank
That's
you.
all.
I live near the base of Mount Diablo, and uh, walking on the trail, most of the time, nobody else is there. And the silence has a weight
Mhm.
and an essence and a feel and is absolutely pervasive.
Mhm. Thank you, Carolyn. So it is a thing. It's not, it's not an app. You're experiencing, and what I'm hearing is you're experiencing silence the way that Liam and Rav Kook are seem to be expressing it. Yeah. Okay, so then what happens? It bursts forth because it is searching for a great arena where it can spread out and stretch itself without any constriction. So poetic. I find it so uplifting. But why is
Hmm.
this uplifting to me? What is it speaking to in you? Yes, Aileen,
Well, it's to
Deborah.
me, it's speaking. I mean, I feel like maybe for most of us, but for me, I'll speak. My soul day to day is pretty constrained.
Mhm.
Um, but I think that within all of us, we have this energy that, where we want to be whole.
Mhm.
And I think what this is talking about is the moments when your soul bursts forth because it's seeking where it can be whole and express itself wholly.
Thank you, Aileen. Deborah and then Susan.
I have to say, I'm really having trouble understanding any of this. Um,
Thank you so much for saying something. Please continue with your confusion.
um, just, I can understand, an individual sentence like, okay, there's a special type of silence that is accompanied by a spirit of holiness. Fine. But then the silence emerges from something within you bursting forth. Um, I'm not quite sure I understand that. I certainly don't understand something bursts forth from the midst of the wellspring of your soul. And I don't know why the silence is connected to that exactly. I just don't understand it, honestly.
Yeah, thank you for saying something. Pete, did you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I did. For me, when I meditate, I realize that silence isn't really silent. Once I've quieted the uh, inner speech, I become aware of my surrounding in much greater extent, as though, my focus is expanded. And that's kind of the way I see this. It's like
Yeah.
when you meditate with other people, I'm aware of their meditation as well. And it's like, I don't know, the world gets larger.
Deborah, do you meditate? Are you a meditator at all?
On and off. Right now, no.
Hmm.
Um,
I have some more thoughts. We'll see if other people look like they
Yes.
have some thoughts too. Susan?
What came to me in this, I understand what Peter is saying, but what came to me with this, because we're talking about bursting forth and the expansion of the soul, I was reminded of when we've talked about awe, how that experience of awe feels so expansive internally, and yet we're speechless. And so that's what was coming to me from this paragraph. So that silent, expansive feeling that you get when you're awestruck.
Deborah, we're still getting to know one another, but do you tend to approach things logically? Is that kind of how you operate in the world?
That's a good question. Sometimes, yes, I'm a lawyer. I
Uh-huh.
think, that probably, training makes me
Uh-huh.
approach things logically, but I do
Yeah.
have a definite spiritual side to me.
Yeah.
And even though I'm finding the topic of silence very interesting. I can understand the concept of something bursting forth from the midst of the
Yeah.
wellspring of your soul. I'm just having a trouble connecting the concept of silence, the beginning of the sentence with the second part of this, or the two sentences.
Yeah. Maybe so this is very hard to access with the logical brain, but what if you try to think of silence as a metaphor for something else? Maybe it's God connection. Maybe it's spiritual energy.
Yeah, that makes much more sense to me.
Yeah.
It's just that we're talking about silence, and so
Yeah. So I
that's
think
where I'm
he's
thrown
calling
off
this
by.
spiritual energy silence, maybe.
Okay,
And we can access, and partly it's because we can access the spiritual energy by silence, by quiet. But it's not really like the silence of the mind is not the same thing as me not talking.
right. I get that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but he's putting it in a very kind of poetic way.
It's very poetic. I don't know. I had trouble to paint before too. I don't know.
Yeah.
And,
Well, thank you
and
so
I,
much
and
for
I
Dave for
understand.
saying something because I think a lot of people would have trouble with this. And today I'm not having trouble with it, but tomorrow I might. It's just and that's okay. And thank you for kind of hanging out with us and working as we all try to puzzle through this. Martin, and then
Yeah,
Wendy.
yeah, picking up on Peter's comment about experiencing silence with others, and then Susan's comment about the awe of silence. This was a few years ago. It was about 1 month after the Boston Marathon bombing. So this coming Sunday, I'm doing it's for many times. It's called the Beta Breakers race. It's a running race in San Francisco. And about 4 weeks after the bombing, for the Boston Marathon, we just had at our Beta Breakers race in San Francisco, just a moment of silence because of all the deaths from that. And it was 60,000 people in the race, dead silence.
Mhm.
And you can hear the silence was loud. And it was quite a spiritual moment when so much energy goes into silence, it becomes loud. Anyway, it was the most awesome experience of silence I've ever had. It's amazing.
Thank you, Marty. We'll hear from Dave, and then maybe I'll read the next one, and then we'll go to breakout groups. Or if we just keep going as a full group today, that's a possibility. But I do like the breakout groups. Dave.
Roger Penrose, a physicist, posits that consciousness is as universal as energy in the universe, and that consciousness is not generated by the individual, it is there, and the individual accesses consciousness. It's like when we look at something through our eyes, we see things, we're not generating things that we see. They were already there and we're accessing them. When we're silent, we become conscious of the consciousness
Hmm.
so that when you're conscious, when you're silent, you're able to allow things to come into you that you're not consciously thinking. You're a perceiver of things.
Hmm.
I suspect when Peter is um, being with other people who are doing the same thing, that what he's also perceiving is their accessing consciousness at the same time and near him in the same way, and that somehow, which I don't think we understand, magnifies it. I think the idea of being dumbstruck is another way of seeing this. So that, for example, there are places in the mountains when I come to a beam, um, and cannot I cannot understand it, but it is overwhelming. Um, and I'm quiet and I'm silent, and that seems to be the only thing to do is to be silent and be part of that. And perhaps this universal consciousness is not only in living things, but in non-living things. Penrose actually thinks it is. When you go to the edge of the Grand Canyon, I don't know how to explain it, except I'm dumbstruck. That is, I am quiet, not only in speech, but my whole soul becomes quiet. Um, what's happening? I think I'm accessing some larger uh, consciousness in that silence. And when there's a large crowd there and they're all silent, just as Martin said, with the 60,000 who are silent together before they're running, um, I think there's some commonality in all of that. And I think the words that Rav Kook is using here are possibly stronger than the experience, but I'm not sure they burst forth, but I think you access them in some way that he thinks is a bursting forth of this, whereas I think of it as when you're quiet, when you access consciousness without by limiting yourself, by pulling away from trying to manipulate it into ways that yourself understands, you become much larger. And if Penrose is right, there's the possibility that you could reach a point where you are accessing the consciousness of the entire universe. And what is that but God?
Thank you, Dave. I mean, you're taking us deep into this kind of esoteric world, which has opened up from reading Rav Kook, I think. I think he is using metaphors and ways to describe this. And yeah, it's hard to describe. I saw Pete's hand and then Nico.
You know that what Dave said is put into words what I was trying to explain. When I'm meditating, I experience the world around me in a different way than I do when I'm thinking about the world and commenting on it. So by just experiencing it, the other people who are meditating at the same time in the same place are experiencing the same thing.
Hmm.
And it's on a different level than the kind of experience you have routinely when
And
you're
I think
thinking about what you're experiencing.
Thank you, P. And I think when you have like a very, certain types of meditation, teachers or leaders, they can create a container to bring everybody deeper than they could on their own or even as a group without like that person there. And I've experienced meditation experiences like that, which really go way beyond. Okay, we're going to hear from Nico. I do want to give us a couple minutes in the breakout room, and it's really just to kind of talk more about this stuff. Like what does it mean to you? What's confusing about it? So we'll hear from Nico and then I'll open the rooms.
I would just say, if I may, that I really enjoy the breakout rooms usually, but here having everybody, spout forth, like the quote said, is very interesting as well. I really enjoyed what Dave said about accessing the consciousness. I know the Greeks talked about it like the ionosphere, like a global consciousness that you could access in certain types of meditations. And that also makes me think of spiritual practices like the dervishes who turn and turn until they lose their consciousness of self and their self to access a deeper
Mhm.
spiritual level. And that's what you also said, Greg, about swimming. And I that resonates with me too. When I swim, it's one of the rare times when I can quiet the inner voice
Mhm.
And I know runners also mention that kind of experience, like marathon runners, or when you are able to shut up the mind through the body in a way, through exerting the body, you shut up the mind and you enter a different state of consciousness.
Thank you, Miki. Well, let me just ask, is everybody okay if we just stay together as a group today? That's kind of seems like where the energy is going. So let's do that. Okay. So, Dave, we just heard from you. We haven't heard from Belle yet today. So let me call on Belle and then we'll go back to you. Belle, if you could remember to unmute.
Listening to everybody talk, I was thinking about meditating, but I think for me, listening to Dave talk about standing at the edge of the Grand Canyon and it's being present,
Mhm.
playing piano, standing at the edge of the Grand Canyon, going outside and listening to birds singing after 9/11 when everything was so still, nobody was talking. I remember going to the supermarket and thinking, there's not a sound. We were at the airport, there wasn't a sound. And you're in that stillness, you were so aware of your surroundings that the mind shut off.
Mhm.
And standing at the edge of the Grand Canyon, I realized how small I was. I mean, I'm small in stature to begin with. However, I, the enormity of it, the vastness of it, um, really was awe inspiring.
Mhm.
And so in that moment, it's just being completely present, and even piggybacking on what Wendy was saying. It's like when you're really in a group and you're listening and you're not speaking, you're completely absorbed in the experience of another person. And that's it for me.
Thank you, Belle. Dave.
I had another thought, but I'd like to join Bell's observation that I think one way to respond to being at the edge of the Grand Canyon is to think of yourself as small. But if you get rid of yourself in that observation, you can write it to being not yourself, but you are part of this. You are part of this canyon. You are an integral part of this infinity that you're looking at. And that as far as you can see and as deep as you can see, that's you. You're not this tiny little thing. You are this massive, unimaginably large thing. And then project that to the universe. Imagine that you are, I think we are part of God. So we're not alien from God. And how do you get to that? How do you access that feeling? And I think accessing not just how small you are, but how large you are is easier when you're on the edge of the canyon or listening to Beethoven.
Thank you, Dave. So we got about 5 minutes left, so maybe we'll start a little bit speed round, so we can hear from more people. So we'll go to Martin and then Leanne.
Picking up on Dave's comment again about being on the edge. So I was at the lip of Haleakala. That's a 10,000 foot high volcano on Big Island, Hawaii. I was there all by myself, and my sense was just, I think, as Dave said, I mean, my humanness, I was beyond, it was beyond human. You know, it was all of a sudden, it's just pure power of God. That's all it is. Anyway, but maybe something nature is inspiring us to feel that way. I don't know.
Thank you.
Um, Although it's not directly on the topic we were just talking about, I'm really struck by the conversation we're having because at times we're treating silence as an absence, and at other times it's an addition, which I don't know, I just find that the pattern very interesting that that there seems to be a polarity to silence.
Thank you, Lamb. And what you and what a lot of is coming to me from listening to a lot of you is where Rav Kook wrote, prepare yourself for silence. That's not, I don't think that's preparing yourself for the absence. It's preparing yourself for the presence. And a friend of mine, years before I joined, I even thought about rabbinical school, she was talking to a rabbi, and the rabbi was sitting with someone on a plane, and this person said, I don't need religion to find God. I can find God in a rainbow. And the rabbi's comment to my friend who was relating this story was, well, yeah, but you only see a rainbow really rarely. Like anybody can find God in the rainbow, anybody can find awe in the Grand Canyon. But I think with our spiritual practice, it's kind of implicit in what we're saying is maybe we can find it other times. What this rabbi said, but how do you find the God in the unhoused person with mental illness, or who's an alcoholic? That's the hard work. I mean, that's like, finding it in the alcoholic is the graduate level work, but even just in the concrete jungle of everyday life, how do we find and carve out moments where we can connect to this something bigger, this Ein Sof, this divine nothingness, this divine somethingness. Beth and then Peter.
God, for the Jews, especially, is not visual. I mean, Moses asked to see God, and he saw his back at the shadow passing by. But God has talked, has spoken to prophets and people throughout our history. And I think for me, it's important to spend some time each day being silent, because I think Wendy said, when I'm talking, when I'm even just talking in my head, I can't hear anyone else, and I can't hear God.
Thank you, Beth. And we'll hear from Pete, and then we'll have one more moment of silence to close our group for today.
Faith is based on experience, faith in God, and that experience is awe.
Thank you. I invite you to close your eyes, and I will share with you the teaching that I heard from Rabbi Dorothy Richman and the Institute for Jewish Spirituality. In the Torah, we begin the book of Numbers, but the Hebrew word is wilderness. And why was Torah given in the wilderness? There's a teaching that the Torah was given with fire and water and wilderness. And wilderness is an area where there are no humans, where there's the nature, where there's the silence, where we really are in a place where we can hear. Where we can hear that most important communication from the divine. What is it to hear Torah? There's the scroll, there's the book, but there's also our own insights, those thoughts that come to us from who knows where. that can point us towards good. Those opportunities to connect with others, to create something more than each of us is on our own. To connect to something bigger, to that ultimate bigness, that ultimate something, that ultimate nothing. Let's feel into the connection with all of us across the country, across the world, across time and space. Connection with our ancestors, connection with those who will come after us. A deep, deep connection. And when you are ready, you may open your eyes.